Donald Trump, who I think is just horrible candidate for the Republicans, is catching on with so many Republicans, it's because he talks like he's got some balls. And I'm begging for somebody in the Republican Party to step forward that's got some balls.
That was a caller to Rush Limbaugh's radio show, summing up what may be the essence of the results in a new USA Today Gallup poll. The opinion that Donald Trump is a horrible candidate for Republicans is actually held by 31% of Republicans who think Trump would be a poor or terrible president. 46% of Republicans say they definitely won't vote for him if he were to run. 50% of all voters say Trump would be a poor or terrible president. And 63% of all voters say they definitely won't vote for him if he were to run. The hopelessness and absurdity of a run for president by NBC's biggest embarrassment in the history of NBC could not be more obvious, but he continues to make the rounds on every show on television except this one. Last night, Anderson Cooper did a fine job in the role of prosecutor, and Donald Trump turned in his customary performance in the role of lying witness.
We've interviewed the former director of the Hawaii Department of Health, a Republican, one of two state officials who's actually seen the original birth certificate that you're talking about in the Department of Health vault. She says she hasn't been contacted by your people. I mean, isn't that somebody they should talk to if they're there?
Well, I've been told very recently, Anderson, that the birth certificate is missing. I've been told that it's not there and it doesn't exist. And if that's the
Who
case,
told you that?
That's a big problem. I just heard that 2 days ago from somebody.
From your investigators? Or
I don't want to say who, but I've been told that the birth certificate is not there, it's missing. And I feel badly about that because I'd love him to produce the birth certificate so that you can fight one-on-one. I mean, if you look at what he's doing as president with fuel prices and everything else, you can do a great fight one-on-one. You don't need this issue. But I've been told that the birth certificate is either missing or not there.
Can you name even one person who your investigators have talked to? Just one?
I don't want to do that. It's not appropriate right now.
Of course, Trump is lying about every bit of this. I told you from the start, Trump was lying about hiring investigators to go to Hawaii and investigate the president's birth certificate. Anderson Cooper was being very generous in going along with Trump's lie that he actually has investigators in Hawaii on the case. Trump knows he has been cornered in his lies on the investigators looking into the birth certificate, and he is now trying another angle of lying. The vulgarian-in-chief who has publicly demonstrated extraordinary stupidity about anything involving the American government now wonders how Barack Obama of all people, got into Columbia and Harvard Law School. He says, quote, "I'm thinking about it. I'm certainly looking into it." He's lying about that, of course. He's not looking into anything about Barack Obama's academic record or how he got into college and law school. He is obviously seething with jealousy that Barack Obama attended prestigious universities. It mystifies Trump how a kid going to high school in Hawaii without the support of his father, who was absent throughout his life, could possibly get into an Ivy League university when Trump knows how hard it was for him to get into the University of Pennsylvania, even though he was born to a very, very rich father who could provide him with all the educational tutoring he might have needed to get into the University of Pennsylvania. One can only wonder if Trump's jealousy might come from him having applied to the Obama universities, Columbia and Harvard, and receiving rejection letters from them. Don't worry, Donald. I'm not going to try to investigate how many colleges you got rejected from. Joining me now, Tavis Smiley, host of the PBS Tavis Smiley Show and author of Fail Up, 20 Lessons on Building Success from Failure. Tavis, Donald Trump has built some successes from failure. He started off with the success of being born to his father, who was a big real estate developer in New York City, greased the skids for him into that same industry. But here he is, it seems to me, looking for and finding every code word, every piece of language he possibly could to try to appeal to haters of Barack Obama who simply don't believe that there's any legitimate way for a kid like Barack Obama in this country to get to Columbia, to get to Harvard, to get to the presidency of the United States?
The irony of it is, Lawrence, and I'm delighted to be here, the irony is that whether you're Barack Obama or Donald Trump, no one who is successful in any field of human endeavor, if they're being honest, will deny that they've learned more from their failures than their successes. You can't have success without failure. We'll come back to that in a moment. But let me say a word about Donald Trump since you raised it so beautifully. I said over a year ago that this presidential race, Lawrence, was going to be the ugliest, the nastiest, the most divisive, and the most racist in the history of this republic. I did not know that race to the bottom would begin so quickly. One can disagree with the Tea Party.
Why did you see this coming?
I saw it coming because it's pretty clear, given how the Tea Party has acted, given that Donald Trump is now playing to the worst in the Tea Party, that this would be possible. I don't want to demonize or cast aspersion on the Tea Party broadly. I believe that there's a certain angst that many people in that entity feel, and I share that angst about government. I don't believe that it's the solution to reduce government. Government does have a role to play. We got to figure out we can figure out and debate what that role is. But there have been some antics that they've engaged in that made it clear to me, showing up at rallies with guns and the Secret Service, working overtime to protect this president, more threats against his life than any president in the history of the nation, indeed presidents combined. So the evidence was pretty clear that they would do anything and say anything in order to make sure that he does not get reelected. And this is not a campaign commercial for Barack Obama. It is to say that we live in a nation where we've got to get back to some sense of civility. I thought after Arizona that there may be a moment here, Lawrence, where we could talk really about having civil discourse in this country. But Donald Trump is playing to the worst fears, the worst anxieties, the worst race baiting that I've ever seen in a campaign. When he suggests that Obama is the worst, will go down as the worst president in history. You know how many bad presidents we've had? Mm-hmm. And this guy's 2 years in. He's regarded as the worst president. It's a bunch of nonsense. But one last thing beyond Donald Trump. I'm disappointed, Mr. Trump. I think, frankly and respectfully, this is beneath him. I had Michael Bloomberg, the mayor of this city, on my program on PBS last night. He has said, let this go. It's a non-winning issue. Michelle Bachmann, for God's sake, has said it's a losing issue. Let it go. But it's not just Donald Trump. I love the way that you've addressed this issue. I respect Anderson Cooper for the way he went after it last night, trying to get to the truth. But the media is being pimped by Donald Trump. We're being pimped. To your point about NBC, respectfully, he's laughing all the way to the bank. Right. And I just don't have regard for people trying to play my intellect that way.
Well, I struggle with this issue of do we talk about him or do we try to put down his hate? I mean, there are people who don't want us to talk about him on this show. I understand that. On the other hand, he keeps spewing these race-based lies about Barack Obama. And I feel the reason I keep coming back to it is I feel those things have to be answered and put down. It's a dilemma. Look, I think May 16th, when NBC announces the guy's going to continue to make his living on their network, and they're going to continue to employ him, which I think is outrageous for them to do. When they do that, this will be over. But up to that time, he's going to continue to spew this hatred.
I think you're right about that. And I didn't mean to suggest there's not worth and value in checking that. I believe in the admonition of my Jewish friends, never again. Yeah. So you can't let these things go unchecked. It ain't for me. It doesn't interest me every night. I think the more you talk about it, the more attention you give him. But I respect people like you who want to take the issue on. The bottom line is the media can't get. I don't see you being pimped by him. But too many people have made a big deal about this, and the guy ain't even announced he's going to run. If spewing this kind of hate gets you this much attention in America, something's wrong with our democracy. The future of our very democracy is at stake. If we're going to allow people who haven't even declared they're going to run to spew this kind of hate, shame on Donald Trump.
Tavis Smiley, the book is Fail Up. Tavis, thank you very much for joining me tonight. This is a subject that's been vexing me about how to progress through it as it's come. I take it day by day. I don't know if we'll do it tomorrow or what we might do tomorrow, but I really appreciate your perspective on it.
Delighted to be here. Thank you, Lawrence.